Hi, I'm Town Manager Austin Faison, and I wanted to thank you for joining us tonight to discuss the fiscal 21 budget. Joining me here is the town's Assistant Town Manager and CFO, Anna Freedman. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Austin.
Thank you for coming. We're going to chat through this budget. A little different this year. Instead of being in front of an auditorium full of people, we're here together. So let's kind of knock out some of these things. So to begin with the highlights, we have a little under $1.5 million worth of growth between fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. Again, this money will primarily go towards fixed costs, the school department, and then it will be spread around town departments. And we have a multitude of goals that we're looking to achieve, both my office and the town council, along with our department heads. And we've decided to group those 5 policy areas and into 5 policy areas, excuse me. So those 5 policy areas are to professionalize town services, leverage technology and maximize service delivery, elevate community and economic development, prioritize health, safety, and overall community and well-being, and lastly, to ensure quality operational and financial management. Moving on, this year we will have $66,406,262 in total revenue and expenditures. And that is a $1.47 million increase over fiscal 20 for all funds, which is a 2.26% increase. In addition, that is a 2.84% increase year over year to town revenues. Now, Anna, can you walk us through a little bit of why Winthrop has very little financial flexibility?
Sure, thank you. So I think it's important to consider when you're looking at the town's annual budget recommendation, how we spend those funds that come in. So this slide here demonstrates that our allocated percent of net new recurring revenue growth is primarily allocated to our school department and fixed costs, with 9% for our town department. So that's a demonstration of the priorities that the town has in supporting its school system and the fact that we have obligations to our fixed costs. And so this means that we don't have much financial flexibility. So if we have to make adjustments in the budget, there are a few places for us to go in the budget, particularly due to the fact that the town sort of enacted a number of savings during the previous recession, and so this will be an area that we'll talk more about later in the presentation and during this budget process in general.
And a silly question here, but that 29% of fixed costs, is that with the town and the school?
Yep, that's for the town and the school, so those are costs associated with pension payments for the town and the school, other post-employment benefits, health insurance benefits, things like electricity. Some of that is also in that school department bucket there. So part of that school department, the blue shading that you'll see on the screen there, some of those costs there are also fixed costs. But the orange part, there are some costs that the town picked up from the school a couple of years ago as part of our budget.
Great. So in terms of revenues, when we look at the total general fund, in fiscal 20, it was $52,606,711. In fiscal 21, that's going to be $54,050,134, which is a 2.74% change year over year. With our enterprise funds, we went from $11,624,488 to $12,007,874, which is a 3.3% increase year over year. And then again, that changes our total operating revenue year over year by 2.84%. In terms of expenditures, We have spread the increases over the town departments, school departments, non-departmental, and enterprise funds. In the town departments, that's a 1.71% increase. In the school department, it is a 3.75% increase. And in enterprise funds, it is a 3.3% increase. Also, non-departmental, that is a 0.35% increase. So we kind of spread the increases out across different cost factors. With property taxes, our maximum allowable levy in fiscal 20 was $34,194,898, and in fiscal 21 we are looking at $35,117,262. That is an increase of $922,364. Anna, can you just chat with me a little bit about that to explain this?
So I think it's important to know that the property taxes are the town's largest source of revenue to support the essential services provided by the town. So that includes school department, police, fire, library, public works, et cetera. And so what this means is that for FY21, the new revenue that is coming into the town as a result of the Proposition 2.5 levy limit increase is only, when I say only, is $922,364, and $364, as Austin said. And so that when there are requests for increases as a result of ongoing fixed costs that are rising greater than that amount in various areas of our budget, that puts additional pressures on that amount of money that's coming in. And it's important to note that the town has some capacity in terms of if it were to ever entertain an override, and I know Austin may want to speak about this a little bit, but right now we are up against our levy limit, and so there's only about $7,000, which we can't even capture due to some rounding, just the way that taxes are calculated. Most communities have this. But our levy ceiling right now, however, is all the way up to over 67 million. And so the town actually has an override capacity of $37.6 million. So we have more in override capacity than we're actually bringing in our allowable levy right now. So folks should just keep that in mind. If that is ever to be a conversation, that the town has plenty of flexibility there to provide for an override.
Great, thanks. So just to kind of hit on this point a little bit harder, our revenue is limited by Proposition 2.5. And what is also going to happen this year and the next fiscal year is we're going to be significantly impacted by COVID-19. We've talked about different numbers that have been associated with this, but at the state level, it looks like over a 2-year fiscal period, they could potentially be down around $6 billion when that is Anna, $44 billion budget?
Yeah, it's around a $44 billion budget, so between like 10 to 15% of their revenues could be lost.
Sure. So when you look at those revenues being reduced, one of the first places that they look is state aid, or local aid, excuse me, with that. And we are really budgeting to the penny of what the local aid that we're depending on from the state. So if that remains flat or is reduced by any measure, we're not going to be able to do the things in town that we have already tried to budget for in terms of level service. This will potentially result in reductions in staffing or reductions in service levels. We have worked very hard with this fiscal 21 budget to maintain the same staffing levels that we went into this fiscal year with. And luckily we've been able to do that. However, throughout this process, when the Finance Commission and the Town Council is meeting about this budget, their priorities may be a little bit different than the budget that we presented. And with that, we have, again, limited financial flexibility in trying to pursue some different ideas that people may have in the community. So with those ideas, it's not that they're bad ideas, it's that we need to figure out how to pay for them. And with the limitations that we have, we will be looking at really bumping up against making hard choices between what we want to provide this community and what the government is looking or is expected to provide to this community. So COVID will impact that a lot, and we will be working through this for the foreseeable future. But again, we are quite limited by Proposition 2.5. And the community, if we are looking to provide some services or increase services, we need to look at potential funding sources that are sustainable over a long period of time to be able to pay for these types of things. So just wanted to make sure that we were clear about what kind of we're looking at our revenue like.
So I'm going to walk us through in more detail the expenditures that are proposed in the town manager's FY21 budget proposal. And so we're going to look through those in some more detail, and additionally, so that folks know, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to walk everyone through how they can access this information on the town's website. We have a new exciting transparency portal that will provide all of this information online and at your fingertips. So, and we'll also provide you with an email address. So if you have questions, you can email, and we will get back to you with more detail on all of the contents of the budget that you may be interested to learn more about that we're not covering right now. So I'm going to dive right into our next slide, which is a focus on the town's, the FY21 expenditures. So both town and school departments have requested additional funds over and above what the new ongoing revenue can support. So as background on this, so with ongoing revenue growth of around 1.4 million and fixed costs requiring an increase of around 367,000, these additional requests from the town departments could not be accommodated in the FY 2021 budget. So any increases for town departments reflected in the FY 2021 budget are for contractual salary increases or adjusting appropriations to meet actual expenditure levels, where previous budgets have not been properly aligned. In fact, many departments will actually see slight overall decreases as a result of consolidating some shared services, such as maintenance, in order to generate as much efficiency as possible. Additionally, the Winthrop Public Schools has requested a needs-based budget for FY 2021 of $23.9 million, which is about $2.6 million over the FY 2020 budget allocated to the schools. So the town manager's FY 2021 budget will be allocating an increase of $800,000, which is all that the available resources can currently afford. And this increase of $800,000 represents 64% of all new unrestricted ongoing revenue projected for FY21. And it's important to know that nearly 81% of the school's total budget is dedicated to employee salaries. Additionally, as you can see on this chart, and the town and the school departments that I was just speaking of are our general fund departments, our enterprise funds, which is our water sewer, our harbor master, ferry, rink, and parks and recreation department. They're seeing an increase of 3.3%. Now, this spending and the associated revenue to support that is generated from user fees as a primarily source of revenue. And so overall, as Austin mentioned earlier, that's total increase in expenditures of 2.26%. And if you notice, that's below what the 2.5% that is provided under Proposition 2.5, and that's because some of our other sources of revenue are below what we would be bringing in if everything was 2.5% or above. For example, state aid, which we'll talk about. So our next slide is a further discussion on fixed costs that we briefly spoke about earlier. I had listed some of these. So these are debt service, energy costs, health insurance, other insurance premiums, our waste management contract to pick up trash, pension costs, snow and ice removal, and assessments that were charged from the state that we have no control over. So as we had mentioned, these changes will add $367,985 to the budget for next year. We've tried really hard to mitigate any increases in these fixed costs wherever possible. For example, we're working to obtain some savings in energy through our solar credit program. We're working to figure out different ways to mitigate risk exposure to hopefully help with our insurance premium costs, but that's an issue that we're still working on. And our waste management, which Austin will talk about later, we've worked to maintain that at a steady state for FY21 as well. And then, so to give folks a sense of sort of the piece of the pie, the share of the pie that each of our town departments shares, you can see that education is the largest sort of single department at about 34.6% of the general fund budget. Some of those costs actually are also for the tuition that the town pays for vocational schools. And then sort of the next biggest sort of piece of the pie is our Public Works Department and our employee benefits, our Public Safety Department, and then the others are a bit smaller. But you'll notice that debt service is a meaningful piece as well at 6.3%. So this just further underscores the fact that we don't have a lot of flexibility, as a lot of our budget is personnel, in fact, and these other fixed costs that we've mentioned. So this next slide gives you another perspective on this. It holds constant, it's a percentage slide, it holds constant the total amount of money budgeted annually, and it shows you of that money budgeted, sort of these large categories of personnel, purchase services, supplies, and capital. And as you can see, personnel, and most of the education, which is the lighter purple underneath that, 81% of that is personnel as well. So the largest chunk of our spending goes to support personnel that deliver services to the community, and a smaller portion go to the supplies and other expenditures that also go into that programming. And then additionally, there are capital costs associated with maintaining the town's infrastructure that make up a portion as well.
You know, with the budget, we kind of get stuck in talking through things using some jargon, and we use some charts and graphs that, with the way that we're presenting it now in the web-based platform, we hope that it gives you a real interesting way to interact with it. That said, I wanted to use something that I kind of use with my children sometimes. These actually have come from the Wojcik household. Thank you to Cody, especially, for helping us out with this, and Jake, excuse me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to visualize how our budget looks and how our year-over-year revenues have changed and how we can spend. And I'm going to use some trusty Legos to visualize this with me. So stick with me. Let me walk you through a couple of these things. All right. So this budget right here, this beautiful looking budget, is how our money is actually distributed amongst a couple different revenue streams, and these represent the departmental expenditures that we're making. In order, education takes up 22 of those blocks, each block representing $1 million. The 2 blocks down here, the black, those are shared expenses. Public Works is up here in the yellow with 1.3 million, so I gave them like a block and a half. Debt is 4 right here in the brown. Then we have benefits that are the blue right here, $11 million goes to benefits. Then we have general government, which is right over here, the red blocks for 3 million, and then down here in the gray is public safety. So just to give you a little visualization of how our budget looks, this is how $66 million gets spent and how it gets spread out across different departments. So although we want to look and say there's one department here or there where we could cut from, it's very hard when you look at it this way that we have significantly reduced and limited funding available. And then when you look at it as the visualization this way, we have about this many blocks to add to it. One there and one here. That's our $1.5 million that we're adding on year over year. So a small amount of money. Now, I'm going to take you to another visualization. So another visualization that we have here, up in this corner. There we go. So this is a quick visualization of how our revenue looks year over year by $100,000. So the way that is distributed is over 3 cost centers. One being the schools, which is represented by 8 blocks for $800,000. The fixed costs are 4 blocks, which is right here in the blue, represented by $400,000. And then the town has 1 block, which is the red block. So that is what we are using this funding for year over year by in chunks of $100,000. So you can see that fair amount goes to the schools, then we have another fair amount going to the fixed costs, and then a small amount going to the municipal government. That said, this is not to make it a town versus school discussion. We are just trying to show how much we prioritize our schools in town and how much of new growth year over year is dedicated specifically to schools. Okay, last diagram for us to look at. Now, this last chart that I built right here, the Legos each represent $1 million. So with the school side is in the yellow and the orange. That's $22 million. In the middle is our fixed costs. So those are things like benefits, health insurance, pension, those types of things, insurance. That is $18 million, so that's 18 blocks. Lastly, right here, is the town part, which is represented by black, and that is 15 blocks, so that's $15 million. So again, just a quick visualization of where we really stand, and I wanted to show you, instead of just looking at bar charts and pie charts and things like that, really a physical way of how we can utilize this budget and how we can think about this budget, because these are essentially real dollars. And when we're making decisions between departments, we are literally changing how these blocks are put together. So you can use these blocks to put together all different types of programs in the community, but what we're trying to do is spread them out as equitable as possible, and we're trying to provide the highest level of services that we can with the funding that we have allocated. Right now, as you can see right here, we have a town and school split, and then we also have the fixed costs that fit in the middle, and like Anna Freedman spoke about earlier, the fixed costs support both the town and the schools. So I hope you understood a little bit better how, with some visualization and a different kind of tool, you can see through the budget a little bit different way. So thanks for your time.
So in speaking about the school, recognizing that they requested a needs-based budget above what we have been able to provide for in the town manager's budget proposal. This provides you with some additional detail on the slide to show you the growth of 3.75%, going from 21.3 million to 22.1 million. And then for the additional types of expenditures across the other town departments, sort of taking the school out of the equation just to see what the rest of the town spending looks like. You can see that it's primarily public works, employee benefits, public safety, and so that explains sort of how the rest of the town department's expenditures are designated in the FY 2021 budget. So talking a little bit more about revenue, and Austin framed this out in saying that we have to be very mindful of what's going on in the larger financial situation in response to the COVID-19 crisis. We have both a public health crisis that requires investments to respond to, but also we have a revenue and financial crisis with folks out of work, unable to pay their bills. Obviously, public service is based off of payments from members of the community and from the state. And so should that ability to pay be impacted by the current COVID-19 crisis, that then would impact our revenues, as Austin stated. The FY 2021 budget right now does not fully take into account the potential impact of the COVID-19 crisis, and this is something that we'll be working collaboratively during this budget process as projections are ongoing to update as needed. There are some adjustments that we made in light of the current public health crisis. For example, we have eliminated any increases to our meals and rooms excise taxes in light of the social distancing measures. We expect that there will not be a lot of revenue coming in the rest of FY20 for that, nor potentially for FY21. We have to make sure that our revenues are conservative, and we have typically budgeted conservatively for revenue so that when projections or when actuals dip, we try to ensure that that does not dip below what we've budgeted. So we will continue to monitor the projections for revenue for FY 2021, but we may need to make further adjustments to this as we move forward during the spring, as it becomes clearer how long the crisis may last and what aid may be available to us from the state and or the federal government, which will be really important. So as you can see from this revenue chart, Property taxes are by far the largest source of revenue for the town, almost 65%. State aid is the other largest share at 22.3%, and that will be one of our major watch areas, because if the state has to make budget cuts, as Austin said, that could impact that state aid number, and we would need to manage around that should that number be reduced. Additionally, another major source of revenue for us is our pilot payments from the MWRA in Massport, for which we have a new agreement, and that will be going up for Massport at $150,000 for FY 2021. And then fees, licenses, and permits, and other smaller fines make up most of the remainder there. Those are also areas where we may be closely watching for FY 2021, as we certainly want to do what we can to support the community and our neighbors in a time where folks may be not at the financial level that they were previously, and so those may be areas where revenues may be down a little bit due to us potentially extending or working with people to make their payments. And then this next slide just gives folks a little bit more of a further perspective on our state aid and our net state aid. So what this is demonstrating is that we receive funding from the state, both education funding and unrestricted government aid, but we also have to pay charges back to the state for things like charter school, tuition, special education, and school choice sending tuition. So what this is showing is that over time, the comparison and the net benefit that the community gets from the state. And so the box at the blue at the top is the receipts, and the charges at the bottom, those are the charges that's what we're sending out. And so that the orange line is the actual amount of sort of net benefit that the community is receiving from the state. And as you can see, it's been pretty flat the past two budgets. The state did implement some recent education reform, and so I think we saw some of that benefit going from FY18 into FY19, but since that bill has been finalized, we will not have a large increase in aid to assist with our education expenditures. We're currently planned to receive only an increase of $59,000, and like I said, that could actually change. That's probably a best case scenario in light of the economic situation. And so this is another issue that shows that we are sort of constrained in our resources to be able to make adjustments in light of somewhat flat aid from the state at this point. And then moving on from the general fund to our enterprise fund. So these are separate entities from our general fund. These property taxes and state aid do not support these funds. So these funds are intended to be self-sufficient and generate revenues to support their operations through user charges and other means. So for FY 2021, the Harbor Master is seeing a small increase of 1.98% for a total budget of around $362,000, with no major changes in their budget anticipated. The ferry is level funded at $460,000 for FY 2021, and it does not assume any subsidy from the general fund at this time. So the town would not be providing any revenues to support the ferry's operations. The ferry currently receives funding from the state and also from a municipal agreement with another municipality. So the recreation fund is also seeing a small increase in around 1.5% for a total budget of $342,956 in FY 2021. Similar to last year in FY 2020 or the current year, we've had to focus programming on items that bring in sufficient revenues to support the operations of the department, and so that approach will continue in FY 20. In FY 2021, I apologize. And the rink is seeing a very small increase of less than 1% to a total budget of $323,466 in FY 2021. Now, these will also be the ferry, the Parks and Recreation, and the rink are also areas for us to be thoughtful about for FY 2021. If social distancing measures continue onward into next year, we will need to make sure that we are strategically managing these funds, since their sort of budgets and operations and their programming may need to be responsive to those social distancing measures. So mentioning that just in case we need to have further conversations about that with the community, depending on how long the social distancing measures are in place. And then one other enterprise fund is our water and sewer fund, of course. And for FY 2021, the budget proposes $10,519,116 in funding for the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund, and this is an increase of 3.78% over the FY 2020 budget, or around $383,000. So this increase supports new debt service for state-mandated projects, such as lead line replacement projects, as well as increases to the town's water and sewer assessments to the MWRA, the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. So the assessments that we pay to the MWRA are the largest portion of the water and sewer fund budget. These increases are currently projected to require an increase in the current water sewer rate, which is currently $22.9 per 100 cubic feet. However, we are constantly updating our projections on this to see if there's any way for us to potentially mitigate any increases, and we're finalizing those projections based on our latest billing, collections information, and other information from other stakeholders involved. So these funds will continue to support our ongoing infrastructure project at the Center Business District, and also help us do planning for longer-term infrastructure projects such as Morton Street and Ingleside water storage, and thinking about that. This next slide just provides some history on our assessments that the town pays to the MWRA, and to see how that has changed over time. So there are slightly different calculations for water and sewer, which are detailed in our budget document, which will be online for those that would like to know more about this. And as you can see, sort of the sewer and the water assessments are increasing around similar trajectories for FY 2021. And it's also important to note that these are preliminary assessments for 21. This could change. The MWRA typically finalizes their assessments later in the spring, so we're waiting for additional information from them on if those will be changing. And now I'm going to kick it back over to Austin, who's going to talk more about some of the challenges and also the initiatives that the town is working on for FY 2021.
Hi, so the next item we're going to tap into is the different goal categories that we have internally. So we decided on some different focus groups of goals because we don't just want to have a disparate set of goals. We want to try to put them into a few groups so that we can know what our progress is in terms of some of these target focus groups. So the first item is professionalizing town services, which has been something I've been striving to do since I've been in Winthrop. Right now, what we're focusing on in the next fiscal year is the energy and climate related reorganization. So this is something I've been talking about since I've been here, is the regionalization of services. We have a good opportunity here to work with our neighbors Chelsea and Revere to combine our funds to have an office that is also supported by the Barr Foundation financially, and it will allow us to have full-time positions for a climate agent, a conservation agent, and an energy administrator at the least. So with the small investment that we had put towards a conservation agent position previously and a grants office, a grants manager, we can utilize that funding and have multiple full-time employees that are able to be utilized by the town for different meetings or inspections and those types of things. They will help us with grant funding, and they will also help us in the future make sure that we have all of the ability to apply for things like Green Communities grants and different climate-related activities. So we're excited for that, and that office will eventually be co-located in Chelsea, and that's something that we are currently working on and should be up and running in fiscal 21. Next up is the solid waste study. I discussed this last year about diversifying the waste stream, and in the fall I appointed a managers committee that was the Winthrop Zero Waste Committee. And they worked pretty hard for a few months, and they put together a great report for my office. And they're actually going to present that at the next council meeting, some of their findings. I don't want to steal their thunder, but they did have some recommendations for fiscal 21. First off, we're going to look to secure a one-year extension with Capital Waste so that we're able to transition to our new program. And that will include some different bins and the likes. We will have a zero waste reduction public campaign in Winthrop, both in the town and in our schools. We feel like there's a real opportunity to have our young people in town learn how to interact with waste differently. I know when I was young, those blue bins were just something I associated with things like soda cans and paper. And now we have another generation coming up, and they will be taking out things like compost and textiles. So just a different way of dealing with our solid waste in a whole effort to try to reduce the amount of solid waste that we are putting into the different trucks that come through our town. We're going to participate in state and federal different programs and fundraising fund opportunities for solid waste. We are going to find a company that can manage the town's compost pile. We've had multiple express interests, so we're excited about that opportunity. We're going to participate in a textile recycling program, and then we're going to initiate some periodic waste-specific events. So different ways that we can maybe help pick up different items or make it a little bit easier on the community to get rid of some of their bigger ticket items. Additionally, in professionalization of town services, we're looking at our risk management. And we have had a real issue over time concerning our liability. We're looking to reduce our overall liability, and we're going to try to reduce that through enhanced training and a preventative maintenance strategy, which is one of the items that our CFO, Anna Freedman, our assistant town manager as well, and our public works director, Steve Calla, have been working on concerning the maintenance of our buildings and our vehicles. Also, we are producing out of the Human Resources Office with Stacey Calla, internal policies and procedures that are being introduced to staff. So we are training staff on these policies and procedures. We are having them sign off on them. We are holding them accountable to them. And we are trying as hard as possible to help this community realize that we are a professional government. We are working very hard to fulfill the modern workplace standards that you would see in any private or public entity. And to show the community that we're committed to that, we are constantly looking at different ways so we can reduce our risk. And that will eventually lead to lower insurance premiums and things like that. But we have paid too much insurance in the last few years due to a multitude of different things. So we are looking as hard as possible to see how we can reduce our overall risk, which will then in turn reduce our insurance costs. Next up, one of the broader goals is to leverage technology and maximize service delivery. So I talked about this last year pretty frequently, and we are trying to offer municipal services outside of the traditional hours of town hall. Winthrop is unique. Winthrop has a town hall that's open Monday through Thursday, not Monday through Friday. We also have public safety and public works that are working more than just the 4-day work week, and we fall short in our office hours for certain things. So what we're trying to do is find web-based platforms that allow us to conduct this business outside of traditional business hours. So for you at home, you can apply for a permit or things like that at the comfort of your own home, rather than having to come into an office. This hits home right now, specifically with all the things that we're doing with COVID-19. The modernization of our service delivery has been put upon us. We have had so many requests come in from the community about a multitude of topics, and the only reasons we've been able to answer those is because we have been organizing these requests and delegating them appropriately. And we're using modern technology to do that. We're constantly taking the temperature of social media using Zen City. We're taking in public records requests through Next Request. We created this budget, and you'll see a great interactive live demo with it later on in this presentation using OpenGov. And we're exploring increased opportunities with OpenGov as well. Ultimately, we have been presented right now with an opportunity to change how we do our jobs. Many have come into town hall and wanted to kind of see butts and seats. And now we're showing that because of pandemic and a public health crisis, that we can actually get the work done without the traditional butts in seats in offices. So in a short amount of time, we introduced Zoom. We're having this meeting over Zoom. We're also using Microsoft Teams in my internal groups. We are using remote working desktops for a fair amount of our employees. So we're really figuring out how to do this job in a different way because of what this time has put upon us. But still, we're kind of learning from this and seeing if we can change the status quo a little bit. So pretty exciting things from my perspective. In addition, the next goal category or goal focus group is to elevate community and economic opportunity. So that speaks to a planning department. And it's very clear to me that this community has a desire for a planning department. And it's gone unfunded in previous budget discussions. It was previously on the ballot in, from what I can see, more than one override. And there's been this clear desire to have professional planning perspectives on some bigger kind of knotty town issues. So what I've been doing is working with some graduate students from Tufts, and they are doing what's called their UEP program. So it's their kind of final project, and they've been focused on doing a study about a planning department in Winthrop. This has been really eye-opening for me because they talk about kind of the history of planning departments and where city planning came from, planned states like Rhode Island compared to unplanned states like Massachusetts. But it really reminds me of how little I know about planning. And I think it's something that I would very much so like to have a department head level individual working in town on this topic. They could help with some of these public discussions that we've been having concerning zoning and the middle school site and things like that. But they can also help us be a more successful community. So I am very committed in this next fiscal year to, I've kind of removed the assistant town administrator from my internal staff. I've assigned those responsibilities to Anna Freedman, and that was intended to open up funding for someone that would be in charge of a planning department. So I look forward to having these students come and present to the town council and the finance commission. This is something that I think is very important to the community, and it's important to me as well. So I look forward to having some form of planning department opened up in fiscal 21. Next up, in the same goal focus group of elevating community and economic opportunity, we're looking at the middle school site. So VHB, which I brought on with some salary savings, will begin working with the joint subcommittee of the town council this month. And if I'm right, they're actually meeting this Thursday, April 23rd. There will be virtual and eventually physical community meetings, and they'll coordinate as many viewpoints as possible. And that's what's really important to me about this. I want a community process. I don't want to continue to hear feedback that the town doesn't do enough to incorporate the various viewpoints of the community and the citizens themselves. So we want as many people to participate in this as possible. I'm very excited about it because I know there is, just like the planning department, a lot of appetite for something to happen at the middle school site. So with VHB working with the joint subcommittee, they will eventually present language to the full town council. That language will then be pushed to the planning board, and the planning board will go through a normal rezoning type of hearing. Ultimately, their proposed language will go to the town council to be voted on in terms of the general bylaws. So I'm very excited to get moving on this, and I think that we have a real opportunity to get some good zoning done to that site and eventually have some type of project happening there that is in tune with what the community wants. The next goal focus group is to prioritize health, safety, and overall community well-being. And this is one of those goals that I think kind of fits in this focus group and the previous focus group, but that's for WIN 2030. So that's our visioning document that we're working on with MAPC, that Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And this will happen over the summer of 2020. MAPC has been reviewing all of our previous planning documents, and they have been summarizing a lot of the community input on those documents. They have been in contact with the advisory committee, the town manager's advisory committee for WIN 2030, and there will be some, again, virtual and in-person community meetings. I love community meetings when they happen, when it's for a group of people coming together to kind of come to some type of consensus and have these good public discussions. Because of the reality of the current situation with COVID-19, we may have to replicate some of these meetings virtually. We are working as hard as possible to utilize all technology available so that people have a chance to interact with this. And just in case people feel like they don't have an opportunity, the opportunity is not lost if you can't participate live in a meeting. What we really want to try to do is have people be able to voice their opinion, whether it's during the meeting, if they want to call into my office or the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, if they want to email my office, get in touch with your town councilor. The discussions do not stop in these meetings. I know that very well. So what I want everyone to feel comfortable with is reaching back out to us. If you didn't have the opportunity to go to that meeting, or you couldn't do the Zoom interaction with the online meeting, that's fine. You can participate in a different way, and we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to participate. Win 2030 is going to be a great document that can set out a plan for the next 10 years in town until 2030, and I really look forward to having that document give us a loose template of what eventually will be a master planning process that a town planner would be working on with the community. Lastly, we are looking in a goal focus group at ensuring quality, operational, and financial management. A real priority of my office. I have the utmost respect for all individuals that go through this process and try to work through budgets and report back to this community. However, I have a level of professionalism that I hold myself to and my staff, and we are consistently incorporating new policies, new guardrails to make sure that we ensure that our jobs are being done correctly. So first, we have some fiscal policies that we have received from the Division of Local Services of the state, which is part of the Department of Revenue. What we're looking at for those is to begin sustaining a consistent level of service and value for residents and businesses, safeguarding financial integrity and minimizing risk through a system of internal controls, ensuring the quality and maintenance of capital assets, conforming to general law, uniform professional standards, and municipal best practices, protecting and enhancing the town's credit rating, promoting transparency and public disclosure, and assuring accurate and timely reporting. These are all incredibly important policies for me to have in place, and I look forward to future generations that work for this town utilizing these same policies so that the town is protected in its financial interests in the long term. There are additional goals that fall within this focus group of quality, operational, and financial management, and those are good government and efficiencies, the consolidation of expenses, building and vehicle maintenance, capital planning, union contracts, and stormwater management, which will be a topic that we will be visiting during the water sewer presentation to the town council and the finance commission. Lastly, we have started significant initiatives during fiscal 20. The Center Business District project started on April 6th. We have made progress in terms of the updating of our technology internally. We have new computers coming in. We're updating the Harvey Room with WCATV. We have fixed things around town. The Arthur T. Cummings School playground, for example. And we are looking at some of the roofs in town and things like that in our coming fiscal capital plan, excuse me. Things started this year, and we're going to continue working on them. Things like the planning department discussions, things like the study of a public safety building feasibility. We are working on things that aren't just contained to fiscal 20. Some of them will spill over to fiscal 21, construction and planning projects. Some of these projects within fiscal 21 that will begin in fiscal 21 will spill over into the future. That said, this budget itself and these policies and initiatives are focused on this fiscal year of fiscal 21. Hopefully next year, we're able to reflect on these goals and the progress that we have made or where we're falling short, and we'll be able to assess where we stand. So that's where we stand right now, and Anna's going to introduce some of the items in the capital plan to you. Thank you.
And now I'm going to speak a little bit about our capital improvement plan, which we're excited to announce is a much more robust plan than we have put forward in the past. And not only will demonstrate the projects that we have that we have planned for FY21, but it will provide a 5-year plan for projects that are on the horizon to demonstrate what priority projects are coming up and how we would propose to pay for those. That document is a flexible document that changes as priorities evolve, as funding opportunities evolve, and as things come on and off of the project year over year. But it's we hope that it will help inform the community about the needs for our capital improvements and how we propose providing for those. So this slide right here speaks just to the proposals that we have for FY21. And we're excited to announce a couple of new funding proposals that we think will help move the ball forward on a number of critical infrastructure issues that we have in town. So the first dedicated source of funding that we are focusing on to support our capital improvements is $150,000 in one-time funding to support a new roof for the library, a study for the Fort Banks access road that we know is a priority of the town council, and also a new water heater for the Gorman Fort Banks School. So this funding we suggest transferring from the town's capital stabilization fund. That fund is funded by money that if the town's budget closes in surplus at the end of the year, those funds contribute to our free cash calculation, and from a policy that the council put in place a few years ago, which is a fiscally prudent policy, funds from that free cash are deposited into our stabilization funds. And so one of our stabilization funds is a capital improvement fund. And so we suggest, rather than approaching the council ad hoc during the year for transfers for individual projects, that we'd like to, as part of this annual budget process, suggest a transfer to support the projects that we are listing to be supported from that $150,000. Separately, there's a separate bucket of $150,000 that the town manager has previously set as being designated from our new Massport pilot year-over-year increases. And so that $150,000 is currently planned in FY21 to support multiple town building repairs and infrastructure improvements, sidewalk repair, and a new police cruiser that we replace each year. Separate from that, we have also undertaken a new approach to our preventative maintenance to make sure that we're maintaining our buildings as best as possible, and to provide support for our building maintenance department to do that. So we mentioned earlier that we consolidated some ongoing maintenance funds, but this $50,000 is in addition to that for one-time priority projects that are bigger than just the day-to-day maintenance. So we've prioritized projects for our police, fire, library, and school buildings out of this funding, and these projects are all focused on improving safety and reducing risk for the town. And we propose utilizing this $50,000 from our building maintenance stabilization fund, which is a similar fund to the one I just described for capital. And so it's the same approach here, to ask up front for those transfers so that we can plan for that during the year and implement that as soon as the fiscal year kicks off. And now I'm going to kick it back to Austin, who will go into some more details about other priority areas for the town.
Lastly, I want to talk about the next steps in the budget process. We're going to have the town council and finance committee work together this year. They're going to have joint meetings over the month of May, where they're going to meet with department heads, and they're going to go through all of the topics that were hit on last year in separate meetings in joint meetings this year. The Finance Commission will present a recommended financial plan to the town council by May 30th. And after that, the town council will debate the topic of the budget and review the recommendations of the Finance Committee, and they will approve a final budget within the month of June. We're still committed to that, even though we have had all these different impacts of COVID-19. Because we have a balanced budget today and what we were presented, we think we have a good opportunity to have the public discussions necessary to get this budget voted on. If you want more information about the budget, I invite you to look at the town website. It's www.town.winthrop.ma.us. On that website, you will have access to our OpenGov budget platform. Anna Freedman is going to give us a live demonstration once I finish up right here of what that website looks like. But what I want you to do at home is please interact with this website. Instead of us using a book like this a thick book that has lots of words in it and you kind of got to flip around a little bit, you can do this on your computer. And on your computer, what you can do is you can interact with the budget and you can click through. There's a department that's really important to you. You can click through and see some of their goals, and you can see what they've spent their money on and what they're looking to spend money on in the next year. This is really important to me because this is the future of budgeting. No longer will we be constrained to a physical document that is static and printed one time. We're going to be able to use these dynamic web-based platforms to add an additional level of transparency and allow the community to look at the budget and interact with it. I want you at home to sit for a few minutes and play with this. From this presentation that we've made today, we're going to take some questions, but you haven't had time to really learn about this budget, and you haven't had the time to understand where the town council and my priorities lie. So I would really like you to take the opportunity to click through, look at some of the goals and objectives of different departments, read through the budget message, look through the goals of the town council, and really become accustomed to some of the goals and priorities that we have for the next year. In addition, we're going to have some physical copies, but we're only going to print out a few of them. And if you would like one, please request one from my office. You can email townmanager at town.winthrop.ma.us, and we'll receive that request and kind of deal with them on a case-by-case basis. That recommended financial plan from the Finance Commission or Finance Committee will be available on the town website on June 1st. And once the town council approves a financial plan for the coming fiscal year, we'll update all of the documents accordingly online, so you'll be able to tell what was my proposed budget, what the town council ultimately approved, and what that looks like year over year in comparison. So really cool way for us to interact with this budget. I really look forward to doing this in the future. I talked about last year, this is an iterative process, and every year we're going to make this budget a little bit better. So thanks for spending the time watching this budget presentation. Next up, we're going to push it over to Anna Freedman, who's going to give a live demonstration. Thank you.